This broadcast is brought to you courtesy of amateur radio station VK7AX in Ulverstone, northwest Tasmania.
Welcome to the VK7 Amateur Radio News for the 22nd of March 2026, your gateway to what's happening across the airwaves in Tasmania and beyond. Now, coming to you from the Tasmanian Amateur Radio News Desk is Nick, VK7WW, with the latest updates, stories and insights from our amateur radio community. We're broadcasting far and wide thanks to our dedicated team, DMR Talk Group 5 and D-Star Reflector 91C via the digital group, HF Relays 1.862 MHz, Graham, VK7GS 3.670, Gary, VK7JGD 7.140, Dale, VK7DG 14.130, Tony, VK7VKT, and 28.525, Ross, VK7ALH, locally in Hobart on UHF CB24 and HF CB24, that's 11 metres, with Mark, VK7 FMAC. Missed it live? Catch the replay Tuesday 8 p.m. on repeaters VK7RAA in the north, VK7RHT, and on UHF CB24, HF CB24 in the south. Now, stay tuned and enjoy the news. The John Moyle Memorial Field Day is this weekend, running from 0100 UTC, that's 12 o'clock midday here, on Saturday, the 21st of March 2026, through to 0059 UTC on Sunday, the 22nd of March. Now, the aim of the contest is to encourage and provide familiarisation with portable and field operation and provide training for emergency situations. The rules are therefore specifically designed and focused to encourage maximum participation. The contest is structured into 8 3-hour blocks, with stations able to be worked again in each block. Following rule changes introduced on the 18th of January, the event now includes all amateur bands up to 241 GHz, excluding the WARC bands. Phone contacts are worth 1 point, CW contacts 2 points, and multipliers apply for each call area in every 3-hour period. With distance-based scoring removed, only serial numbers are exchanged starting at 001 and incrementing for each contact. For logging, N1MM has become the standard platform for VK contests, with configuration details and custom UDC files available from the website on the email edition of this broadcast. Now, VKCL can also be used, although scoring and Cabrillo formatting may require manual correction. Accurate log formatting is essential, and the contest manager should be contacted if assistance is needed. There are multiple entry categories across bands, modes, and operating durations, whether single or multi-operator, home or portable. With favourable weather still on our side, it's an ideal opportunity to head portable, boost VK7 participation, and make sure a few more Tasmanian call signs appear in the logs. And that's 73s from Richard, VK7ZBX. Why join the Wireless Institute of Australia? Well, it's represented Australian amateur radio since 1910. In fact, it was first conceived on the 11th of March, which just happens to be my birthday, and remains the only body recognised internationally to speak on our behalf. From global spectrum negotiations through the International Amateur Radio Union to local advocacy with the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the WIA protects our access to spectrum and the future of the hobby. Members also benefit from practical services including the QSL Bureau, Amateur Radio Magazine, Club Insurance, and national support for training and assessment. WIA membership isn't just about benefits, it's about backing the organisation that represents, protects, and strengthens amateur radio in Australia. Tassie statewide events Meet the Voice will be on next Sunday, the 29th of March 2026, commencing at 11 a.m. in Ross. The Meet the Voice trophy will be awarded, a car boot sale, bring any items you want to sell. It's BYO Everything event, bring your barbie, your food and your drinks and socialise. Meet the voices you talk to on the radio. Any queries, contact Al VK7AN on 0417 354 410. Bravo. That's 73s from Al, VK7AN. Statewide SSTV nights. A busy night net saw the following participants: VK7AX, KT, ZAB, ZGK, OO, and ZCF, all sharing over 50 photos. And the main themes were locally seen hot Aussie and European cars, a visiting 4x4 camper truck, the famous Bletchley Park country house in the UK, and the amateur radio station GB3RS it houses. Tasmanian bridges and one from the Netherlands, and other highlights were a Fly With Me Zeppelin airship waiting at Heathrow for an aeroplane, a high-power HF amplifier, a Cardwell remote-controlled variable capacitor set at Entark's Clubroom Tech Night, a pair of magnetic base workbench clamps, a new and expensive copy of the edition of the Rothamels antenna book, and a good evening from a wandering duck. Again, Tony, VK7AX, interconnected VK7RJG to his SSTV International Gateway, and VK7's exchanged photos with PA3EKI and PC1K in the Netherlands. Please remember to leave a 30-second break between transmissions to allow the European stations a chance to send photos. Note, Ken, VK7KRJ's, and Steve's, VK7OO's, fully automatic 24/7 monitoring site allows anyone testing to send a picture and the ability to check their transmission on those pages almost immediately, anytime, both North and South Tasmania. If you miss the net, there are archives of these SSTV nights on Ken and Steve's websites or on the Entark website under blogs, and that's 73s from Andre, VK7ZAB. Now, WWFF, SOTA, POTA and IOTA, and who knows what could be coming up next. It seems there are still a few gremlins lingering in the Parks and Peaks spotting platform. My apologies if I've missed any on activation in this wrap-up. I compile the wrap-up from posted spots and uploaded logs, so the occasional contact or activation may slip through the cracks. It's been another busy and productive week for VK7 operators, with multiple activations across the states, including a first-time outing for one operator. As mentioned briefly last week, Stuart, VK7FADZ, successfully activated the Collins Cap Summit, logging 11 SSB contacts on the 40-metre and 15-metre bands with operators across VK, ZL and JA. Not one to rest, Stuart was back out on the trails just a few days later, heading into Wellington Park to activate Mount Montague Summit, again operating on 40 metres and 15 metres. Jim, VK7JZ, set up in the Murphy's Flat Conservation Area, situated along the banks of the Derwent River between Granton and New Norfolk. He had a great activation, logging 6 CW and 33 contacts on SSB, bringing his total to 39 QSOs for the activation. A team effort saw Rodney, VK7HAM, Peter, VK7ZPE, and Al, VK7AN, operating from the Dismal Range Conservation Area, not far from Dilston. The group was active on the 40-metre band. A special mention goes to Nick, VK7WW, who completed his very first POTA activation. He operated from the Middle Arm Park area on the banks of the Tamar River. Well, not quite, it's a little bit away from there, but just outside of Beaconsfield. Nick logged 5 CW and 18 SSB contacts for a total of 23 QSOs. Congratulations on the milestone. Now that you've started, it's hard to stop. Meanwhile, Phil, VK7ID, is currently enjoying a VK3 SOTA trip, activating a range of summits as he travels around the state. Keep an eye on alerts and spots to catch Phil on the air. And finally, as this wrap-up is being written, Jim, VK7JZ, is calling CQ from the Platform Peak Summit. We'll have the full details of that activation in next week's report, and that's 73s from Matt, VK7MAT. Now, Inwards QSL Bureau information. The current updated list of QSL cards held by the VK7 Inwards Bureau at the 20th of March is in the email version of the broadcast. Did you see your call sign in the list below? If you have taken up your call sign after 2019, would you please let Herman know so he can cull QSL cards from the list for QSOs that are dated prior to that? Email to westyh, that's WESTYH, at aussiemail.com.au, and that's 73's from Herman, VK7HW. Now, news from the Northwest. The Northwest Tasmanian Amateur Radio Group, the next club meeting will be commencing at 1:30 on Saturday the 11th of April 2026 at the usual venue, the Scout Hall, 73 Alexandra Road, Ulverstone. Afternoon tea will also be held, and members are encouraged to bring items for show and tell. The club rooms are open till 6 p.m. to socialise. Brenton VK7HP is planning to show his HF linear and associated power supply he built back in the late 70s, early 80s when he was an apprentice. A small plate of afternoon tea would be appreciated. We have tea, coffee, etc. available for members and guests. Visitors are most welcome to attend, but if you do have any cold or flu symptoms or not feeling well or have been in contact with a confirmed COVID case, then please don't attend the meeting. That's 73's from Eric, VK7EV, the news officer. Now, a reminder for listeners that the VK7 Amateur Radio News broadcast is also available in video with a video adaption version encoded by Tony VK7AX. It includes video where possible of activities and events within the amateur fraternity of VK7 that I have permission to share. For instance, photos exchanged on the weekly SSTV Tassinet club activity are also included where possible, where I have permission to share. It's relayed via the video stream at 9:30 a.m. on Sunday mornings and archived to YouTube sometime on Sunday. Links to the video stream and YouTube archives can be found on the text version of this broadcast. Enjoy! 73's from Tony, VK7AX. Now, news from the north. The Summits on the Air Worldwide Flora and Fauna Parks Group meets twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays at 10:30 a.m. till 12 at the Glebe Gardens Cafe, Henry Street, Launceston. For more information, contact Al on 0417 354 410, and that's 73's from Al, VK7AN. Now, you're listening to VK7WI, and this is the VK7 Amateur Radio News broadcasts. Now, from Northern Tasmanian Amateur Radio Club Incorporated. There are radio contacts, and then there are those that stop you in your tracks. This event occurred last Sunday in Tasmania, to be precise, when a simple call in Morse code bridged more than just distance. It connected decades of amateur radio passion with one of the most historic sites in communications history. When Nick, VK7WW, tuned in and heard GB3RS from the National Radio Centre at Bletchley Park, he wasn't just making another QSO. To put things in context as to why it means so much, I will quote a paragraph from some correspondence between Nick and the Radio Society of Great Britain, and I quote, "I'm writing this letter to express my absolute delight at having had a CW QSO with GB3RS at the NRC last Sunday. Volunteer operator was Simon, Mike 0 Kilo Bravo Juliet. This is one of the most memorable occasions in my 57 years in amateur radio. Connecting with Bletchley Park resonates with me for several reasons. I was first licensed in 1969 as G8CCY and a member of the RSGB, initially as BRS 27869. That's British Receiving Station when you don't have a call sign. I emigrated to Australia in 73 and I've been active in amateur radio ever since. And the skills I gained enhanced my professional career as a signals and intelligence officer in the Australian Army. Those were Nick's words, and they capture the connection and feel absolutely perfectly. From a technical point of view, the QSO with GB3RS was received with an RST of 559 in Tasmania, and Nick scoring an RST, readability strength tone, of 579 from Bletchley Park. I think most amateurs would agree with Nick's sentiments when he later said, "I applaud the efforts of the RSGB in establishing a showcase, the National Radio Centre at Bletchley Park. We don't have an NRC in Australia, wish we did," and the RSGB's reply certainly put things in perspective. It's great to receive such positive feedback. It really makes the efforts of volunteers who keep the NRC open 7 days a week so worthwhile. Yes, you heard that correctly. The National Radio Centre is staffed entirely by volunteers, not occasionally, but every single day of the week. That's an extraordinary achievement by any measure. You can check out the photos of the Swish Flex radio control room at Bletchley Park on the NTARC website, the actual live waterfall, and if you look closely, you'll even spot Nick's QSO details written on the notepad beside the Morse key, proof that the contact really did happen. Hi. Can you remember the 3D printed handheld radio antenna holder that Colin, VK7ZCF, brought to a tech night recently? The one where Colin wanted to tweak his original design to make it fully usable? Well, the one that as a prototype was no longer needed was quickly reassigned to a possible new job by Brendan, VK7 VIP, and after many inquiries from people as to the outcome, I checked in with Brendan. It turns out that this piece of creative repurposing is indeed perfectly shaped for storing those pointy feathered missiles that people enthusiastically fling at dartboards. You can admire the photo of this stroke of repurposing engineering genius on the NTARC website. Please note there'll be no coffee morning on Friday the 3rd of April as it falls on the Easter Good Friday public holiday. Pictures and Nick's full letter to the RSGB will be available on the NTARC website under blogs for this broadcast. Upcoming events: on-air test and technical net session every Wednesday night on 3580 from 7 p.m. and then the technical net on 3.567 megahertz from 7:30 to 8:30. And of course your host is Nick, VK7WW. Clubroom Technical Night, the next session will be on Wednesday the 1st of April and will commence at the usual time of 6:30 p.m. at the Clubrooms, Archer Street, Rocherlea. Coffee morning held every Friday, with the exception of Good Friday. Time is from 10 a.m. to noon. Finally, if you have any items of news, please email them to the Secretary at the following address: news@ntarc.net. All items to be received no later than 5 p.m. on the Friday prior to the broadcast. That's all, folks. 73s from Stefan, VK7 ZSB Secretary, NTARC. News from the South, Reist. Now, amateur radio promotion. Justin, VK7TW, on Friday morning headed across the river to the Lindisfarne Community Hall for a morning of amateur radio promotion. What is all this craziness I hear you talk about? The Lindisfarne School for Seniors invited Justin to talk about what amateur radio is all about. The presentation was interactive and was about an hour long, with a break in the middle for the obligatory cuppa. There was a good 15 minutes of questions and some that Justin had to think about, so the group was definitely listening and engaged with this subject. Justin's been invited back later in the year to give another talk, this time about the amateur radio pioneer Pop Medhurst. 73s from the Reist Committee. Now, Roast Rolls and Radio Night, also known as Wednesday's Experimenters Group in disguise. A huge thank you to our chef extraordinaire Tony, VK7VKT, who cooked up a succulent lamb and pork roasts and vegetarian options with plump bread rolls and delicious gravy. Our new barbecue has fondly been called the Grillmaster 5300 Deluxe, and it did a fantastic job with the hood down cooking and warming the roasts. Our Wednesday night experimenters saw 25 roast rolls consumed and a club room full of lots of radio related banter. We said it was a success. Tony is thinking he might even try a build your own mini pizza night and use the Grillmaster 5300 Deluxe with hood down as a pizza oven. Watch this space, thanks to our chef de resistance, Tony, VK7VKT, and that's 73s from Justin, VK7TW. Now, the April Forum night is 3D Printing and Amateur Radio Month at Reist. We're flipping the usual order and swapping presentation and forum nights so members can actually show off their creations. Yes, this is your cue. Bring the brackets, bring the enclosures, bring the antenna mounts that only just survived the last SOTA activation. Bring the clever shack fix that solved a problem nobody else noticed, but you absolutely could not ignore or live without. And before you start getting suspicious, no, this is not an April Fool's prank. We genuinely want to see your amateur radio 3D printing projects. From humble lumps of filament to beautifully engineered pieces of RF adjacent brilliance, take us on the journey. Show us all the experiments, even the failures, and I'll just tweak the Z offset one more time moments, and the final masterpiece that somehow works better than it has any right to. Wednesday, 1st of April 2026 from 7:30 p.m. in the club rooms, and it's streamed. See you there, Reist Committee. Now, the April presentation night is on spectacular 3D printing. Praj, VK4MPB, also VK7MPB, has been building 3D printers since 2011. Back when you didn't print a file, you nervously injected raw G-code into what was essentially a heated toaster that had ambitions of becoming a replicator. Slicers were cryptic and confrontational bits of software. Firmware updates required emotional resilience, and bed leveling was practically a sacred ritual involving tiny hex keys, deep breathing, and intense philosophical debates about 0.2 millimeters of Z offset. A good first layer wasn't expected, it was negotiated, sometimes aggressively. My printers still live in the garage where they've evolved from temperamental science experiments that occasionally produced abstract art or spectacular nests of plastic spaghetti into surprisingly competent little manufacturing units. Now, while I was chasing the mythical perfect first layer and cleaning lumps of molten filament off nozzles, addictive manufacturing quietly matured. The same core principles behind those early DIY machines now produce surgical implants with bone growth lattices, aerospace components with internal cooling channels that can't be machined, advanced engineering parts, and spectacular art, all in a mind-boggling array of materials. And yes, it turns out the same technology responsible for heroic prints and catastrophic spaghetti is also brilliant for us radio amateurs, from portable HF and SOTA gear to clever shack fixes, RF experiments that genuinely move a nano V&A trace in ways that only makes me more curious. 3D printing has become a real engineering tool. Now, Praj will be sharing some of the practical, creative, and genuinely cool things you can do with it today in everyday life, in serious engineering, and in amateur radio, along with a few demonstrations, just to prove it's not enthusiasm for melting plastic. Expect nostalgia, curiosity, and a bit of garage-born instability, and the unshakable belief that if I level the print bed one more time, this time it'll be absolutely perfect. Truth. When? The 8th of April 2026 from 7:30 in the club room, and it's streamed. See you there, Reist Committee. You're listening to VK7WI, and this is the VK7 Amateur Radio News broadcast. Now, this Wednesday night's experimenters group see the return of the WEGS night, and they have a big night lined up. Amongst other things, a Raspberry Pi, Pico Morse decoder, Mesh Core WIO tracker, L1 Pro, and much more. Wednesday evenings kick off early, with members drifting in from about 6 p.m, many armed with takeaway containers or home-cooked dinners they fully intend to eat while pretending to discuss RF propagation. The DATV studio broadcast begins at 7:30 p.m. and goes out live on the Reist YouTube channel. Around it unfolds the usual controlled chaos, lively debate, hands-on experimenting, gear tinkering, coffee consumption at an industrial scale, the hatching of elaborate cunning plans, and the kind of wide-ranging amateur radio mischief and global problem-solving that somehow only ever truly makes sense inside the club rooms. Please note, we're not currently broadcasting on DVB-T RF, so we'll still see you there or on the stream. 73s from Justin, VK7TW. Now, Are you looking to join the world of amateur radio or upgrade your license? REAST has you covered with regular training and assessment days for all license levels. And congratulations to our 3 foundation candidates who all passed and have their call signs already. Now, the key dates, standard, advanced and regulations assessments are held on alternate months. The next is on the 28th of March 2026. Foundation training and assessment days are held every 2 months, with the next one Saturday the 21st of April 2026. Now check out the full schedule on the REAST events page. Do you need to secure your spot or ask a question? Email reast.assessor@gmail.com and your inquiry will go directly to the learning organizer who will be in contact with you. We have learning resources available, including our foundation license training videos that are a must-watch for beginners. Find them on the REAST YouTube training and assessment playlist. Practice makes perfect, so prepare with the WIA Foundation trial exams, and the link can be found on the email edition of the broadcast. Don't forget, check with Reg, 73s from him, VK7KK. Now, regular VK7 gatherings and events over the coming months, the Sewing Circle Net, daily on 3.640 MHz, commences at 6:30 p.m, Australian Eastern Standard Time. The statewide SSTV Net, held every Thursday night via the North-South link on VK7 RAF, VK7 RJG from 7:30 p.m, and in the North and Northwest VK7 RJG on 438.55, minus 7 MHz offset, and in the South VK7 RAF, that's 146.650 with a negative 600 kHz offset and a CT-CSS tone of 141.3 Hz to link RAF North-South, plus VK7AX International SSTV gateway connected to VK7 RJG for the duration of the net. Don't forget the statewide microwave QSO party following the Sunday broadcast on 1296.15 MHz FM, one group in the Greater Hobart area and the other in the Greater Launceston area, and then North-South digital contacts on 1296.2 using Q65-60B. Stations in Launceston area transmitting on the odd minute, southern stations on the even minute. Then there's the REAST 6-meter AM net on 53.1 MHz every day from 4:30 p.m. SOTA WWFF group meetings Mondays and Fridays 10:30 to 12 midday at Glebe Gardens Cafe, Henry Street, Launceston. The NTARC Testnet and TechNet session CW course from 7 p.m. on Wednesdays 3.580, and then the technical net at 7:30 till 8:30 on 3.567. The NTARC Technical Night discussion is on Wednesday the 1st of April from 6:30 p.m. at the Club Rooms, Archer Street, Rochalee. And coffee mornings are held every Friday from 10 a.m. at the Rochalee Club Rooms. Now, Northwest VK7, Wednesdays from 8 p.m. local Northwest Tassie Amateur Radio repeater group on 2 meters VK7 RMD and All-Star node 56780. Northwest VK7, Thursday commencing at 8:30 p.m. local, the Northwest Tassie 2-meter DXnet on 144.190 upper sideband. Now, the VK7 events. Well, 21 to 22nd of March, it's the John Moyle Field Day contest. That's this weekend. The 28th of March, Meet the Voice Barbecue from 11 a.m. in Ross. REAST, 1st of April, AR 3D Printing Forum Night, Queen's Domain Club Rooms and streamed from 7:30. REAST, 8th of April, Spectacular 3D Presentation Printing with Praj, VK7 MPB, Queen's Domain Club Rooms and streamed from 7:30 p.m. NWTARC on the 11th of April, Club Meeting from 1:30 p.m. at the Scout Hall 73, Alexandra Road, Ulverstone. And the World Amateur Radio Day is on the 18th of April. That's from the IARU. And REAST on the 6th of May, the Technorama presentation and tour of the Hobart FM community radio station, Howrah Community Centre. And on the 7th to the 8th of November, Tassie Ham Econ Amateur Radio Contest Conference at Utah's Sandy Bay. A reminder to those people rostered for next week's broadcast: newsreader VK7TW, repeaters Reest, Entark in the Northwest thanks to NWTARC, WCRG, NWCRRA, VK7AX, VK7JH and VK7DC. 160 meters VK7GS, 80 meters VK7ALH, 40 meters VK7JGD, 20 meters VK7DG, 10 meters VK7VKT, UHF CB24 and HF CB24, VK7 FMAC, and DMR Talk Group 5, D-Star Reflector 91C from the Digital Group. And a big thank you to everyone who contributed and supported this week's broadcast of the VK7 Amateur Radio News. That's it for this week. If you missed the live transmission, remember you can always catch the rebroadcast on Tuesday at 8 p.m. on VK7RAA in the north, VK7RHT and UHF CB24, HF CB24 in the south. Got news, stories or updates to share? We'd love to hear from you. Send them to VK7ARnews@gmail.com by Friday 9 p.m. You can also join the conversation on our VK7 Amateur Radio News Groups.io page. Now stay tuned for callbacks on this frequency with each relay station using their own call sign. On behalf of the VK7 News team, this is Nick, VK7 Whiskey, wishing you good DX and a great week ahead.